All right, let's get to the big game here. Minnesota at Michigan. Number 12 Michigan will look to continue its powerful rushing attack after piling up 290 yards on the ground against USC. Backup running back Kalel Mullins led the charge with 159 yards and 2 touchdowns and may be competing for the lead back role. Spoiler, he should be the lead running back. QB Alex Orji made his first career start, focusing more on the run than the pass. With just 32 passing yards, he had 43 rushing yards after allowing Iowa's Caleb Johnson to rush for 206 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ouch. Minnesota faces a tough challenge against Michigan's dominant ground game. The Gophers will rely heavily on QB Max Brosmer and running back Darius Taylor to spark their offense and try to end Michigan's dominance, as the Wolverines have won 26 of their last 28 meetings. Nick, what are your thoughts going into this game?
I think Michigan's run game just looks so good. They have Kalel Mullins. They have Donovan Edwards, and then Oregon didn't show much of it, but he has the ability to break off the run. I just think the pass game really struggled this season. I mean, she just looked not good in the passing game, and H. Warren also was looking pretty terrible in the games prior before he started. So I think it's going to be difficult for Michigan to continue passing. I don't think their quarterback should that. They have to rely on their run a lot. And then Minnesota, I think they're going to have to try to fortify their run defense, because if they don't, then Michigan's just going to run all over them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Minnesota, they looked good with 2 shutouts back to back. Now, that was against Rhode Island and Nevada, so, not exactly the most potent offenses in the world, but still, I always say, I give credit for a shutout no matter what. It's hard to shut out just about any team out there. So, back to back shutouts, I was giving credit there, but I mean, that defense just fell apart to Iowa's running attack. And Michigan, I mean, a lot of people are mocking Michigan's lack of passing, which, don't get me wrong, Alex Orji did not look good passing the ball. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't mock Michigan for their passing. It was not impressive, but the offense, when I rewatched the game, they were pretty creative. I mean, they really made USC try to defend the entire field. Sometimes last year you kind of saw it was just Blake Corum going up the middle, especially in that Penn State game. It was basically just Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards going up the middle. But, I mean, they were running some read option with some wide receiver sweeps. They were also taking Alex Orji to the edge and making them defend the entire part there. And that was one of the things USC had their biggest issues with, was when they would over pursue on those boundary runs. And so when they're going to the boundary, USC is just over pursuing, and Kalel Mullins, Donovan Edwards, whoever it was, they just put their foot in the ground and then they went up and they were getting 8, 10, sometimes 15 yards on a single run. So, my key to the game for Minnesota is they need to be good in the run game on defense. They need to make sure they're not over pursuing, that they're taking advantage of when the running backs are going to the outside, and they also need to take advantage of Michigan's poor secondary. One of the reasons why that defense looked so good was because of Michigan's defensive line. If their defensive line is not getting pressure and Max Brosmer has time back there, he's going to be able to pick this Michigan secondary apart, as long as you don't throw at Will Johnson. That is like my number one key. Don't throw near Will Johnson. I want every play for Max Brosmer to say, there's where Will Johnson is, point him out and say, I'm not going to throw it over there, because you throw near Will Johnson, and at this point, 2 out of the 4 games, he has a pick 6, so you can't do that. So you got to stay away from Will Johnson in my mind, and they have to try and find a way to keep Max Brosmer safe. I mean, he's back there. He's not a very mobile QB. He's going to be just fresh meat for this Michigan defensive line to go after. Minnesota's going to have to figure something out with their offensive line. But I do like their offensive line better than USC, so I think they have a chance. Nick, do you have a key to the game for Minnesota?
Yeah, I think they like you said, they need to rely on Brosmer. I mean, he looks good, and then I noticed when I went to the Texas-Michigan game that their secondary does not look nearly as good as their front seven. So if they can find a weakness in that, if they can they'll end up succeeding. They don't need to rely on the run game if they're able to pass the ball safely.
Yeah, I agree. All right, what's your key for Michigan here in this one? Nick, I'll let you go first on the Michigan key.
Um, I mean, I don't see them improving their pass game as much, so I just got to say, keep running the ball, keep running it well, have some trick plays or some ways to confuse the defense. And then also Michigan, they have to work on their pass defense some because their run defense has looked great. But if they can't stop Brosmer from passing the ball, then they'll lose.
I agree. That was like my main key for Michigan as well is just stick with the running game and don't get cute, right? don't get cute with it. Stick with the run game. It worked eventually for Iowa, even if Michigan is tied or they're down in the first half because they're not able to move the ball. Just stick with it because look what happened when Iowa just kept running the ball in the second half against Minnesota. Caleb Johnson ran wild for over 200 yards, and also on defense, they got to stop blitzing. You have got to stop blitzing and just trust your defensive line. You don't have the guys in the back end to be able to blitz as much as Wink Martindale does. Listen to this. The first 3 games, Wink Martindale blitzed over 40% of the time. Over 40% of the time they were blitzing. And then in game 4, they blitzed 26.79% of the time. And I think that paid off a lot. And when you saw those big pass plays, those touchdowns, Michigan was blitzing. So if Wink Martindale wants the secret to, using this defense the right way, it's let the defensive line work because at the end of the day, the defensive line that's the best part of this defense, and you just got to trust they can do it on their own. They don't need help. So my main reason that Minnesota versus Michigan is a much-watched game in Week 5 is actually I'm really interested to see what happens with this passing game because word is out of practice that Michigan has been playing 2 QBs in practice. It's actually been a 60-40 split for them between Alex Orji and Davis Warren. So if Davis Warren is still getting 40% of the snaps in practice, that leads me to believe that they think Davis Warren might play at some point. Now, is that just because they're thinking if we get down and at the end of the game we put Davis Warren in? Maybe, who knows? But there might be a 2 QB system coming for Michigan this week against Minnesota. And if that happens, I want to make sure I'm there to see it. Nick, do you have a must-watch reason for this game?
I would just say the run game for Michigan has just looked so exciting. It's just been so stellar. So just to watch it, to see Mullins and Edwards just dominate Minnesota would be very interesting.
Totally agree. Totally agree. All right, let's go to a couple comments really fast, and then we'll do our score predictions. There we go. There's Steely, Matt, JR, yo, bro. What's up, Steely? My guy. Appreciate you being here, man. And Sean is here. He says there are 3 Seans in here. I've got a lot of Seans in the chat right now. I like that. Sean says Minnesota needs to play the Bear defense. That's interesting. I think they do as well, and that was the interesting thing that Michigan was doing in the game against USC was actually going with a bear front at times as well, but when they went with that bear front multiple times, that's when they started moving the ball to the outside more, and guys were over pursuing and there weren't as many on the outside. So I don't disagree, Sean. They do need to be in that bear defense in order to stop the run. But they also got to make sure those guys on the outside are ready to tackle as well, because you get Kalel Mullins out there, you get Donovan Edwards or Alex Orji out there, they're a load to bring down. Those guys are big and strong, and getting your cornerback to bring them down, that's going to be quite the feat for them to do. All right, a couple more. Doug says, I saw that Michigan was employing 6 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends on multiple occasions. Yes, yeah, they were, and that was another thing they were doing to help that box. They had like 7 or 8 guys in the box sometime when they were doing that, and then they were running the ball to the outside, or they were throwing a screen pass to the outside. It was pretty creative stuff by Michigan in that game. I'm not gonna lie. I don't like to give Michigan a lot of credit, but when I see it, I got to give it to them. And War Room says USC should take care of business. Should take care of Wisconsin at the Coliseum. You're right, War Room. They should. We're going to talk about that game last, so stick around and we'll talk about USC, Wisconsin. All right, Nick, score predictions. I'll go first here. That way, you can go first with the next one with Indiana. So my score prediction here is 27-17. I think Michigan wins this one. I think the Gophers keep it close to start the game. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a tied game, 10-10 or something like that after the first half. But I think eventually Michigan's running game just comes out on top, and we could see a little bit of a repeat last game with Iowa and Minnesota, where Michigan just kind of runs all over the place in the second half and they kind of figure out Minnesota's offense. What's your score prediction, Nick?
My original score prediction was going to be 35-17 Michigan, but after thinking about it more, I'm thinking more like 24-17. I think Minnesota will keep it close. Michigan's just going to have to adapt, and they probably won't be down much of the game, but I do think they're going to have some struggles against Minnesota.
All right. All right. Hey, as a Buckeye fan, I love to hear that. I love to hear that.